Good finance people take the objective perspective first and then overlay subjective on that to get to the overall consideration in making a decision. So when you're looking at labor, to me, the cost of labor is no different than the cost of a supply input, evaluating the profitability of a product or service. And what I mean by that is you first have to understand to what extent that's controllable versus not controllable in terms of the cost. So for example, in a union environment, the cost of labor is not just the salary that you're paying to somebody. The cost could be the benefits that are required as a result of that union contract, the difficulty in making a change if you make a decision that that resource isn't the right resource. And so when you're weighing the cost and the usefulness or effectiveness of a resource, labor is no different than any other resource. You understand the controllable versus uncontrollable inputs that go into their ability to do their job, and you assess the controllable and the uncontrollable outputs that come out of them doing their job, and you form a set of metrics. Sales is a good one because you can measure how many leads did they get, how many did they convert, how long did it take them to convert, what was their average sale value, and so on. You have different measurements for different job functions, and the job of finance in aiding in that conversation is to identify the inputs and the outputs and the controllable versus uncontrollable and how that individual that you're measuring affects that. Sharing it for sharing its sake, I'm not sure that that's particularly useful. Sharing it as a means of either demonstrating to the employees or to the team the effectiveness that the team plays or the role that the team plays in achieving the company's overall objectives is usually not a bad thing. If you don't underpin that with KPIs, it's not a useful conversation. So you have to bring that conversation to them. Again, cause and effect. In all of the reporting that I do for companies, I believe that if you don't bring cause and effect to the conversation, you end up having an incomplete conversation. So telling these employees how profitable the business is without having them understand what drove that profitability and what could cause that profitability to disappear is not going to give them the right perspective. Typically what a company will do is they will say, I want X% of their compensation to be fixed and Y% to be variable. And that variable compensation is achieved if they hit the performance metrics that we have set in place for what we want as the outcome of their efforts. And so, for example, if I have an executive who I think that the target compensation in a competitive environment for an executive at that level is $100,000, and I want their compensation to be 80% fixed and 20% variable because that's consistent with the industry, I might say we're going to give them a base salary of 80 with a bonus objective of 25% at target, and to really drive home how important it is that they perform, we have an upside that's tied to overperformance, or we have a ratchet that's tied to underperformance. Some companies will make that all or nothing, which I think, quite frankly, is not necessarily the right way to go, because if you're 80% into the year and you know you're not going to get your bonus no matter what, you may take your foot off the gas. If you know that you've got something at stake, you'll keep driving all the way to the finish line. So that's one way you do it, by target earnings. Another way you do that is you might say the company has a return requirement of X. So we want a return on equity or a return on revenue of X. And if management does their job and they make that return pre-bonuses higher because they've either done cost savings or they've blown through on the revenue numbers, then they might say, look, we're going to give management a share of everything above that target return on revenue, in which case, the sky's the limit. Everywhere that I've put in place or advised on compensation, I'm very specific and very clear with senior management that there must be a predictability to compensation, and that those thresholds of an executive in this particular type of role should be able to rely on X% of their compensation regardless, and Y can be variable based on their performance. And that has to be something that an executive can go and sit in their living room and calculate how much am I going to earn if I do the following. If your executives have that ability, invariably you're going to find that they're going to perform better because they know the rules. They know where the goalposts are, and therefore they can shoot for the stars, or they can determine how much effort they're going to make towards getting there.